All right, cool. All right, good morning. We're going to go ahead and get going because we have a lot of information to jam into about 45 minutes. So, good morning. Welcome to Parents Weekend. I'm Jeff Durso-Finley. Oh, I get to take this off, don't I? Yes. I'm one of the directors of college counseling here at Lawrenceville. This is Holly Brooks-Becker. She is the co-director. And we're just going to sort of give you sort of an overview of some of the things that we're thinking about and help get families prepared for entering into the college process as fourth formers, both from a sort of philosophical and practical standpoint. So what you're seeing on the screen now is actually our college counseling office's mission statement. This is sort of the pole star of how we organize our programming, how we organize our counseling. And what I want you to sort of gravitate towards, I'm not going to read it, but this notion that the overall process is an extension of the education students receive at Lawrenceville is an incredibly important point. Right? We're not a different administrative arm. We are an academic department that takes the skills and dispositions that students are working with in their classroom, in their experience on campus, and we build upon it and we apply it to the college search process. And part of what we're doing is taking these skills, the academic dispositions, their different ways of thinking and knowing, and applying them to a new discipline, which is the college search. And additionally, we help them understand what's happening in higher education so that not only can they be successful in the application process, but be successful college students once they arrive. So it sounds a little bit abstract, but what am I talking about here? So in terms of academic skills, these are the things that they're doing in ICAPS and in honors chemistry, in their in statistics, right? About learning how to communicate effectively, applied research, critical thinking skills, data analysis, evaluating sources, detecting bias. All of these things are happening every day in the classroom, and these are critical academic skills that we can then turn around and transfer to the college search. And so then when they arrive, when we pick them up in the middle of the fourth form year, when we start talking about data analysis or research or second level questions or supporting a claim, they know exactly what we're talking about. Okay? And it gives them some confidence to enter into the process. I can do this, because they can. But obviously we're talking about adolescents simultaneously, so there's some developmental skills that are taking place as they grow and mature through their tenure at Lawrenceville. Right, so their understanding of themselves as a learner is something that's an ongoing process. Being able to be self-reflective, being able to be thoughtful, making informed decisions and smart choices and weighing evidence, the confidence to manage a complex multi-step process. That's something that we talk with them about on a regular basis, and that's an acquired skill over the course of an adolescent's life. It's hard to imagine a 13 or 14-year-old moving into a 17-step process and not being overwhelmed. Right? But when we pick up the juniors, they're thinking to themselves, I've written the U.S. history paper. I know how to do some advanced critical writing. I can do this. Right? So again, as they get to that stage, these are the kinds of things that we're having conversations with them about. Now, one of the questions that always comes up in this particular session, or will come up over the course of the year, right, is why are we waiting until the middle of the fourth form year to start doing college counseling? I have a cousin, I have a neighbor, I have a friend, and they're talking to their college counselor as in the sophomore year, which is crazy, to be perfectly honest. Somebody who's a 10th grader does not have these academic and dispositional developmental skills to be able to handle something as complex and as interesting and as deep as the college search process. They don't know themselves. So when we get asked the question, why this timing? Why are we starting at this stage? In some capacity, it's because they're ready, right? And we'll talk a little bit about that. But we're a little bit more subversive than that, to be perfectly honest, because we have been working with them up until this stage. They just don't know it. So as a college counseling office, one of the things that we will do is be in constant communication with all of the support structures that exist at Lawrenceville. So we're talking to academic advisors. We're at scheduling day to help them put together a program of study. We are in communication with parents. We're having Parents Weekend programming. We've got winter gathering programming. We've a variety of publications. Talking to faculty at faculty meetings. So we're getting all of the information that we need and that students need to navigate the process well through the second and third and early part of the fourth form years into their hands. We're just sort of subversively getting that information into their hands without them having to sit down face-to-face in the college counseling office. So they're getting that information. And in addition, one of the oddities of college admission is that you're always sort of 9 months behind the cycle. Everything changes, and we get this post-game analysis, and then we have to then sort of rejigger what we're thinking about or things that are changing, whether it's policy, whether it's standardized testing, whether it's admission plans. So we're constantly engaging with the college admission world. Again, so when those fourth formers arrive, we have the information that we need to be able to work with them effectively. So I made a quick reference to it, but again, why this timing? Why the middle of the fourth form year? Right? It's because they're ready. They can do it. Right? They have the academic skills to be able to work through the noise and the fog that's coming at them from the marketing machines in higher education. Right? They can be self-reflective and thoughtful about where they want to take their education. They can write with confidence. Right? They can make decisions based on the information that comes to them. Again, they can assess sources. They can detect bias. They can do the things that they need to do that they couldn't do when they were younger. Right? So having a conversation with a 10th grader about some of the subtle differences between Colby and Bates is silly. It's not going to help them be a better college student or a college applicant. Right? But leveraging these particular skills in a way that they can embrace the college process and think about all of its complexities, including the complexities of self and how to move into a collegiate career and then a professional career. Now they're ready to do it, and that's why we wait. Okay. But to be perfectly honest, that's when we're ready for them. We're ready to pick them up, and I just want to communicate that confidence that we feel that it's the best time to pick them up. This is a fantastic time in the college counseling office. The fifth form parents just left, and we were talking about how all of those skills that we were referencing, all of these things that we've been working on the fifth formers for the last 10, 12 months, they're coming out now. We're seeing it in our offices. Kids with confidence that are writing great essays, that are thinking about a multi-step process, that are communicating with their families, that are weighing evidence, they're doing data analysis, they're trying to figure out who they are and where they're going. And all of these things that we've been talking about with the fifth formers are coming out in our counseling meetings and in the decisions that they're making and the communication they're having with their families. It's awesome. It's exactly why we do it. So when we get to this stage, to the beginning stage with the fourth formers, right, in terms of the college admission information network that's coming back to us, we're now seeing those trend lines. At the beginning of that 9-month cycle that we start behind, we're getting that information. So what kind of conversations are taking place with college admission offices based on what they're seeing in their ED pools? How is the test optional policy changes playing out in the way that their pools are being built? Do they have any changes that are taking place on their campuses that are altering the way in which they're going to enact their application process? So we're getting information back so that when we pick up the fourth formers, they have sort of the freshest news that's going on in higher education. And then the seniors are starting to get settled. They've got their applications out. We're helping them transition out of Lawrenceville and into college and into this sort of next step to adulthood. But that enables us to transition beautifully into the fourth formers, who will start with pick up in January, and they don't know anything. But it's so exciting to pick them up at that stage because we get to watch them grow into the seniors that we're seeing, as I said, in our office right now. And when I sort of made an oblique reference to the counselors being ready, we wanted to just sort of to communicate some confidence that some information about our office. There are 6 of us in the college counseling office. We all worked in college admission. We think it's incredibly important that college counselors should have worked in college admission. And these are just some of the examples of places that our college counselors that we have worked. And there's over 100 years of experience in admission and college counseling that's in our office. Probably more than half of it is us. But lots of different schools, lots of different experiences, but everybody's had the opportunity, the chance, the pleasure of being in a committee room and arguing for a kid, saying this is the reason why we should admit this student to this school. And that experience plays out in our counseling relationships in really dramatic ways, and is important.
Okay, so you are going to get a chance to meet our whole office and to really dive into this process with us. So we'll start the kids in January, but then we really start the fourth form families at winter gathering. Okay, so if there's one thing you can do right now is, mark your calendars for winter gathering. It's the first weekend in February at this point. Is it possible that with the pandemic and all that there might be changes as there were last year to winter gathering? We went, the show goes on for college counseling. So whatever shape winter gathering takes, we are not losing the opportunity to have this weekend deep dive of all kinds of information with you all. So stay tuned, read your email. It will keep you posted for sure. But just to give you a sense of what happens at winter gathering, we really take a significant part of both days to go kind of macro to micro in terms of understanding our philosophy, learning about college admission, how those college admissions offices actually make decisions, analyzing college applications, whether it's reading case studies or just getting sort of deep diving into the inner workings of an application, what an application looks like when it's pulled apart, and having a chance to meet with your child's individual college counselor. So I'll take my college counselee's parents and put them in a room and chat, and Jeff will, and all of our counselors will. It's just a really great day to get the overview. It's a lot of information, so have some coffee and be ready. But we start the programming on the Saturday plan, and then we move into our Sunday seminars. That's the wrong date. That's the brochure from last year, so pay no attention to that. But basically what happens on Sunday is you get a real chance to explore topics that are of particular interest to you, and of your own, also representing what you have in terms of experience. So we have programs for people who have never done this before. We have people who are basically getting AP college counseling because they've done it so many times that they really want to understand the history of standardized testing in the world and what's happening with it now. So this is just a sampling of some of the programming that we've done in past years. And lots of it will remain the same, but we have an incredible office, really. I put our office up as a fantastic resource for this community. And so you get a chance to have people who have a particular interest in something put together a program and share it with you. So, and it really does range from, dealing with the stress of, looking at the adolescent stress in this process, to understanding athletic recruiting or financial aid, or the really particular interesting opportunities that are out there that people may never have considered. So we'll deep dive with you. It's an exciting day. We hope you will keep your eye on all of that programming and make sure that you set aside time to participate. It really is there's a lot of places that will bring college admissions people in to talk to their families, but we'd rather give you the straight scoop and help you understand, again, to sort of the process here as well as what's happening in college admissions, to give you good, solid information so that you can, in fact, block out some of the weird noise that's out there. So we'll see you at winter gathering for sure. So what do we do with our fourth formers? From the beginning, we have a big kickoff meeting, as I say. That's when they find out who their college counselors are. And that starts a very intentional process with them that takes advantage of all of those skills that Jeff was mentioning and applies it to this subject, okay? They have the skills. They've never done this subject before, okay? College counseling. So we want them to be really well prepared and engaged. I will tell you that plenty of the kids come into their first meeting having worked their way through this survey that we give them, which is quite an endeavor. Okay, we want them to know themselves before they're worried about their college list, to sort of understand who they are, who they've become over the time that they've been at Lawrenceville. And then some of them come into that meeting going, okay, where's my college list? And you're like, okay, wait. First, we have a plan here. Let's start this at the right place, which is understanding yourself. We will work hard to establish relationships with these kids. These are relationships that endure. We have the great benefit of being part of this community. We're on duty teams. We coach. We help with clubs, and we are sharing a life with the students as well as the faculty here, so we really understand their experience, and it's a privilege to us to get to know these kids so well. Okay, so we see it all, and we love that part of our job. We also are going to get into some particulars about testing and curriculum planning so that they have a confident sort of timeline and plan for the rest of their career. We're going to start to work hard on how to conduct excellent college research. They know how to research a history paper. Do they know how to take those? We want to teach them how to take those skills and think about, does the tour guide have a bias? Is there a marketing machine that's taking over your psyche here? What are the truths? How are you asking your questions? How are you self-directing your research to make sure you're getting questions for the questions that you have, not what they want to tell you? So we have a fun series of exercises. We have a lot of those programs that you would have a chance to see over winter gathering. We will sprinkle through the spring because we don't think kids are ready to do a fire hose full weekend immersion in this topic of college admission. So we'll do individual spring seminars that they can come to if they want to. We have opportunities for them to interact with colleges over time. Once they've become familiar with the research process, we say, okay, well, let's invite some college people here in a non-threatening environment to go around and test this out. Like, let's give you the tools that you have. And honestly, our college visitors, we love this. We have two different ways that we engage college visitors on our campus. One's in a big sort of college fair setting, and then we make it much more personal in the fall of senior year because the kids are more ready to have that serious conversation instead of being a little bit more of a mass consumer. But even at the college fairs, the reps will come back to us at the end of that going, I love coming here. Kids ask the best questions. Well, the only reason they can do that is because they've been taught here to ask great questions, and we've added to their ability to ask those great questions of colleges. So we're putting those skills to work. We have a plan. By the end of the fourth form year, the kids will all have taken at least one round of testing. Testing has become inordinately more simple in the past 2 years. So, they basically have to take SATs or ACTs or both over the course of this year, preferably in the spring when they're actually ready. And, some of them have taken PSATs already, like most of them did, but some didn't, and that's fine too. So we have a plan for them, but we will put all of this information and send you like a mid-process report for them, and just sort of tell you where are we in the process at this point here, and we'll take their college lists that they've generated at that late juncture and put it into selectivity groupings for you, talk about what's important for summer, tee them up to use summer really well, and then we'll take it from there for the fifth form year. But mostly all through that process, we are working toward helping them come up with a college vision that is their college vision, uniquely theirs. And we're testing that vision, we're building the vision, we're deepening their understanding of why that group of characteristics are the essential qualities for them. And it usually starts pretty superficial, and it starts to become much more nuanced over time. And we love that. And that will continue into senior year too. Okay, we're still asking kids when they're in our office, okay, tell me your vision now. And for some kids it just tweaks and deepens, others it really shifts, but that's okay because they're really exploring and engaging. List building is obviously this sort of central piece of, it's a constant process over time. It is always a work in process. We will lock kids' lists in December, honestly, at the very end, okay? So some kids have very well-developed lists at this point, some of the fifth formers. Others are still in the process of shaping, and they're waiting to think about some of the decisions that they're making right now, how it might impact them. So we're going to keep touching base with them along the way, though. So we will get a list from them in the early May. We will weigh in again about that list in June. We will come back around and think about it as they come back from summer, and then again in November after the first applications are out. So it is evolving. It's out there. I think we do have these signposts along the way and a process built in, and I just want to reassure you that you'll keep sort of hearing about those along the way, but it's not going to happen in February when they have their first meeting with one of us. I think for us, things to remember along with that this process, and we'll tell the kids this straight up, it's complicated, but it's completely manageable. And we have a really good curriculum basically to help them navigate this in a way that they can feel confident that they're really thinking this through, that they're in charge, and that's fantastic. It can be transformative for many, many kids, and I think many go into it thinking that it's going to be a chore and come out of it thinking, well, that was kind of cool. The things that they're the most nervous about, maybe writing the essay, turn out to be some of their favorite parts because they actually are able to explore things about themselves that they've never been asked to explore. So they're ready, they're really eager and hungry, and it can be really an exciting process for them. We talk repeatedly about, and for forever, about putting your kid in the driver's seat on this one. This is the first time for most of them that they really are the person who's in charge of this. Because for as much as they came to look at Lawrenceville, and people say, oh, well, it was their choice. Maybe it was their choice, but they had a lot of help and a lot of partners in it. You get interviewed as parents when they're applying to Lawrenceville, right? They're in 8th grade for many of them. Like, what in the world are you gonna put them in a driver's seat for? You're not, right? But this time, this is a gateway to adulthood. It is time for them to be more independent. They have the skills, they know themselves. They're the ones who are gonna live out their college experience in a much more independent way than their high school years. So we want them to take some ownership. That driver's seat analogy, great one. It's easy to say when you're 30 years old and you've never had a child learn to drive. It's scary, okay? Yes, it's time. It is time for kids to learn how to drive when they're 17, but when you're a parent, and even though you know that, turning over the wheels and trying to figure out how in the world to teach them and guide them and trust them to do this well is terrifying. Parental angst is a powerful force. So, I think our minds go straight there, and that doesn't happen. Okay, this is what we want. This is our goal as we get them through the college process and the driver's process, right? Is this very independent, confident kid sitting in a car and taking off for a great adventure somewhere. The analogy to college process is really profound, okay? There are definitely going to be moments when this is an angsty process for parents, and sometimes, honestly, for kids, they can look at you, but and be a little nervous, but they get there, and it's right, and it's time. So done well, this is the kid we got going off to college, excited to take it on.
So one of the things that happens in our office is that Holly and I have a phrase that we use quite often, which is blunt is better. So when we're approaching complex topics, our attitude or our approach is just to come right at it. And one of the things that happened 4 or 5 years ago is both in our office, in the dean's office, and actually in the health center, was noticing a dramatic uptick in students. I'm talking about stress, anxiety, being worn out, and we took it on. And you may have noticed, and just even it's now sort of seeping through the colleges, you may have noticed that University of North Carolina declared just a class moratorium, mental health day this last week. So tens of thousands of kids don't go to class, right? Because we're seeing this little uptick. So these are just some quotes. We've been doing some work nationally in terms of program presentations of just as a representation of some of the things that are happening out there. But what we ended up doing, which was fascinating, was going through, just so you have a sense of what's going on in the background of our own offices, is both in terms of unintentional messaging and intentional messaging, changing the communications that are going back and forth between our office and the students. So whether it's publications, whether it's little negative things, if you do a quick Google search for standardized testing prep, you'll get a page that pops up that says, "Is your child ready for high stakes testing?" Right? It's not the Hunger Games. Right? And we actually, with the test prep company that we work with, we told them they're forbidden to use that phrase, right? Because it's just unnecessary stress. Okay. But so little interesting tone switches that we've been working on that have been fascinating. We were just talking to the 5th floor before you guys came in, and one of the things that we say in the big meeting that opens up the year, the first time they get together as a class, is we say, "Don't make your senior year all about college," and they cheer because the stress was so high. and they want to be with their friends, they want to be back in their classes, they want to be doing their sports, they want to be part of the musical, and realizing that they can have a senior year that's not all about college. You can just sort of see it tamp down. So this is something that actually we'll take on. You'll hear it come in our program, and you'll see it at Winter Gathering. It'll be in the communications that go home, things like privacy, social media, and just the last thing I'll say on this particular topic is that one of the things that I talk with my counselees about is that we actually can make this a stress-free process, or a mostly stress-free process. But if you approach it, if you manage a complex process, the steps needed to manage a complex process, right? We're going to see something, we're going to solve it, and we're going to put it away. We're going to see something, we're going to solve it, and we're going to put it away. And I tell them in April, you are going to be in my office in November and December, and you're going to look up and say, wait, we're done? That's it? That wasn't that bad. I didn't believe you when I said that this was going to happen. And it's really interesting because it's happening right now. Now, this was all taking place, and then the pandemic hit, okay? And we started thinking about that, because what as an office, okay, what are the things that would take place in the college counseling office in our process pre-COVID? Right, what are the things that we would be doing with the fourth form? Relationships, getting a standardized testing plan. Holly walked you through that, those digestible chunks that the students can enter to get to the end of their fourth form year, feeling like they've got a relationship with their counselor, they're working on their college list, they got a plan for the summer, they know how to do research. These are all of the things that took place, and then all of a sudden, we're virtual. And so it was a little, again, this adds to the stress. And then we started realizing, sorry about that. What can we do, or what will we do in a hybrid or a virtual or in a masked environment, right? And we realized that it was exactly the same. Our process did not change. We may have a different delivery system, we have different modes of communication, right? But for the students and now for the fourth formers who are going to have a different process from the college admission side for some of the changes that are taking place at college admission, what we did 5 years ago and what we did last year and what we're going to do next year with the class of the 23s is going to be exactly the same. Right? We've got a process that works, and we're going to work with it. Now, from the college side, there are some differences, and it's important to just sort of wrap your head around. When the pandemic hit, so the 21s and really the 22s are the ones that are seeing the biggest impact in terms of their rhythms altered. But there were problems with standardized testing, having access to test centers. Athletic recruiting got completely exploded. They needed to do primary research, and so they would go online and realize that College X just has nothing. They've got a virtual tour, and that's it. But some really interesting things happened in that now have affected the 22s a little bit, and what will certainly be in place for the fourth formers now is that the testing issues that were floating out there that you heard about have been solved. In fact, standardized testing is so much easier to deal with nowadays than it was even 4 or 5 years ago. There is incredible online resources. Colleges and universities have poured literally millions of dollars into their online research tools. As I said, there used to be maybe one, kind of drone-driven campus tour or a voiceover. Now you can do online information sessions, chats with professors, chats with current students, online interviews, guided tours with a GoPro, with somebody walking backwards. It's really remarkable. But so all of these things have come into play. So and it includes the athletic recruiting. So if there are students who are, class of 2023, who are thinking, all right, there's still some campus restrictions. I'm a little nervous about how my college research and how my process is going to go. The things that affected the 21s and the 22s are essentially gone. So again, releases the stress. Now, that being said, there are some things that are floating out there that we should think about. Okay? When the pandemic hit, basically 1,800 plus colleges and universities went test optional, and the vast majority of those have now piloted programs for the next 2 or 3 years, and they're going to keep it. They found that in their admission processes, they could be test optional within their selection rhythms, and so they're at least going to see what happens until those classes come through their own undergraduate classes to see how successful those groups are being and how the selection model is going to go. What that's done is it's made a huge spike in terms of applicant pools. So at the highly selective schools, even in, so for 2020 and 2019, they were at their highest levels ever, record applicant pools. Right? Because of the test optional nature, those highly selective pools went up 22% on average according to the College Board. And this went all the way through, all the way down the selectivity scale. So things have really changed in terms of the size of those applicant pools, in many ways driven by the test optional nature. We're not seeing admission officers travel as much anymore. The recruitment model has changed. The admission funnel has changed. So that's something that we're tracking incredibly closely. We're going to see, early decision, we've always watched that creep up and creep up and creep up and creep up. I mean, we remember, when the first school cracked 50% of their class being admitted early decision. And there was this national uproar. It's horrible. How could you do this? Now there's probably 40 of them who would admit greater than half their class early decision, and nobody even bats an eye. So that's probably going to increase over time, and all of the issues with enrollment, financial aid, the admission office budget, that's going to continue. So these are the kinds of things that we're tracking that are taking place as a result of the pandemic, and we're happy to talk more sort of offline. We will talk more when we get to winter gathering.
Okay, so we are going to turn this over pretty quickly to some questions from the crowd, but we thought we would take a few minutes to sort of cherry pick some of the universal themes and questions that we imagine are in your brains right now, or that we know from past experience. So we'll just cherry pick a few of these and then get ready to turn it over to you all to drive the rest of the presentation. So starting out, is there enough time for my child to be known? Okay, back to the timing question. I would say absolutely. This place is big. It's also very small and very personal. We have access to, I've referenced this already, we're part of this community. We're very much involved with the rhythms and life of this place. When our kids are in the play, we come watch the play. When we're coaching, we're out watching games. We're having lunch with our faculty mentors and being on duty team. So we see kids, we know where they're coming from, and then they land in our office, and we're sharing so many stories and getting them to think about all of what they've experienced here and what they're looking forward to. That we get to know them very well. Okay. If they're writing for the paper, we're reading their articles. Like, we have time. We also have access to every bit of text that's ever been written about them. I was digging around in the students' memos the other day when I was working on a recommendation, because it's like, oh, this is a great story. So finding things, and plus we ask the kids, like, who are the people on campus who know you the best? So in case we need help getting a message through to a kid, or if we want them to go consult with a mentor that if they're struggling in some way, like, we have access to these people and to the resources. So yes, we are going to know your children well, very well by the end of this. Will they be encouraged to stretch or reach? And the answer to that too is yes. We know how hard they work here. We know the amazing opportunity that's here. The kids are absolutely should feel confident that they can pursue places that are exciting to them. I'd say there's a caveat to that, okay? As Jeff said, blunt is better here. We don't want kids to make decisions blindly. We want them to make informed decisions. So we're gonna give them plenty of statistical information, feedback over time about what has happened to candidacies like theirs, and try to help them see what level of risk they're willing to take. At the end of the day, we're going to work toward that balanced list so that we know that they're applying to places that they for sure can get in. But we're not going to pull them back and say, you can't do this, okay? We're going to say, talk me through your rationale for how you're constructing your list, and let me give you some feedback about what I see and what my colleagues see about where this fits in terms of selectivity, and then ask students and their families to make strategic, informed decisions. Okay, but we are not going to say you can't apply here. You shouldn't bother. Okay, some kids really want to try, and if they really want to try and they have a backup plan that has a great safety net for them, awesome. We're on there. We're ready to wave their flag and support them as they do.
I'll roll off a couple of these. So does it matter who my child's college counselor is? The answer is actually no. As I mentioned, there's 6 of us. We look at it as group work. We are constantly in and out of each other's offices. We are passing off essays. What do you think about this? I'm not sure how to respond to this. What is this? Does this look right to you? There have been literally dozens of conversations that have taken place just in this last week about, should we submit test scores there? What do you think about this particular supplement? So we are constantly using each other's resources, or say, oh, Miss Falk went to a Berkeley program last year. Come here, let's go talk to her. So the information, the bank that we have up in the office is deep and vast and helpful. And so who is the point person, the point person for communication, who are going to be tracking documents, things like that. That is a lot of what matters in terms of the connection to your college counselor, but in terms of information, in terms of counseling resources, in terms of support, it doesn't really matter. The role of financial aid in college admission is a complex one, and the scholarship search. It could be its own program, and in fact, it is its own program. That was one of the spring seminars. The one thing that I would say about the role of the scholarship search and financial aid and the merit aid search right now is that if you believe that college costs are going to be something that needs to be considered in your child's college process, that's a conversation that needs to start in January, like right out of the gates. It's completely manageable. It seems overwhelming. It can be handled and been handled beautifully, but the communication, the honesty, the work that goes into it, it's not something that comes up in the 5th form year. It's something that begins in the early part of the 4th form year. And in fact, it's an awesome opportunity to develop some financial literacy in students and understand how what does loan debt mean, and understanding how a little bit more depth and detail about finances and about higher education. So it's a great conversation. It's a perfect learning moment and learning opportunity, but it has to happen, and it has to happen right out of the gates. And then in terms of standardized testing, this happens all the time, especially in this particular cohort and in this particular time of year, because PSATs just started. And somebody will say, oh, I've got a cousin, I've got a friend, I've got a neighbor, and they're taking their SATs now, and suddenly I feel behind. And the answer is no, 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 no. We have a very strong feeling, and bolstered by 100 years of experience, that you do not need to start standardized testing earlier. It does not help you in the process. In fact, most times it stresses you out in the process. And actually, Holly just got an email a few days ago from a 4th form parent who said, you told me not to test early, and I didn't believe you. And I'm just writing to tell you, you were right. I did it, and it stressed out my child. So I think that waiting until the spring of the 4th form year is totally fine. They're not going to test higher if they test earlier. Right? All it's going to do is give them something else to focus on besides their classes and their teams and all the things that are important at Lawrenceville. My own children, right, I'm now in my 4th to come through this process, did not take their first standardized test until May of their junior year, and they did just fine. All right, so this is not something that we're sort of telling tales out of school. Hang on, take your time, be a student, enjoy your 4th form. The testing will come. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, it's also really deeply connected to the fact that they're reading books. They're
the
learning
curriculum helps
math.
so much.
Like our curriculum is getting them ready to do this test when it's time. And if you're preemptively trying to advance some of those skills that you're just having to learn it twice and learn it early, and you're going to test more is pretty much what's going to happen. So the stress factor is real. And the testing landscape is dramatically simplified because there are no more subject tests. They really have like one significant test to take, and they have time in the late summer and early fall of their senior year to take these tests to figure out which test is the right test for you. Do a little bit of concentrated work in the summer and come back and polish it off. So we don't need to be on a frantic pace here. In fact, it's really counterproductive. So I loved the parent. I asked her permission to say, can I do this? And she said, yes, it should be part of my understanding is that I've learned, and I'm going to share my information with people. So lots of people are asking, okay, but give me something. What can I do now? What should I be doing now? One big piece is certainly encouraging your child to stay really focused and involved and connected to this place, to use their resources well, to really connect with their teachers, connect with their advisors, really find things that they're doing that are bringing them joy and happiness, finding classes that they're really excited about and putting their best effort into that. Like those are the things that we need them to do so that when we start the process, they have the energy and momentum and support structure and skills to do that really well. So that's a big thing, but I know people want more than that. So we're big readers. We thought that, and we know that there's a tremendous amount of college noise out there, but what we'd like to do is direct your attention, if you really feel like doing something right now, to some books that we think are actually really helpful. Barnes & Noble's has, 3 or 4 big rows of college books, but these are ones that we think are good. So we thought we'd tell you about a couple of them. Feel free to take a snapshot of the screen if you want. The first one's like a tried and true classic. It existed when I first started this job, I think, 100 years ago. So colleges that change lives. I'll tell you really quickly about it. That it was an initiative, an author who decided to say, there are a lot of colleges out there, and some of them everybody knows about, and some of them are maybe off the radar a little bit, but are really changing people's lives. And I want to tell you about this quickly because I had a student once who was nervous, a really bright kid, nervous. He had some bumps in the road along the way at Lawrenceville. He came into my office and said, I'm just really nervous. He said, I know I'm smart and I know I have a lot to offer to a college community, but I'm scared my record's not going to hold up. And I don't know what to do. How do I make sure I find a good college for me that will allow me, to use all of what I know I have. And I actually handed him this book and said, you might take a peek through this. There's some really 40 interesting colleges and some interesting insights into them. Read it. He came back 2 weeks later. It was all turned down and annotated and stuff. And he used that to guide his list making. Ended up picking a college that was in that book. And at the end of the first semester of his freshman year at college, the president of the college called me and said, I want to come to Lawrenceville, I want to meet you and see this place because this kid is amazing, and I just want to see where he came from. And that kid ended up being the poster child for this place. He traveled with the president. The president mentored him. It changed his life. I mean, Lawrenceville changed his life too, but this place, he really found it. So it's a great book. The colleges keep having to change a little bit because sometimes they get so hot from that book that they all of a sudden, everybody knows about them. It's kind of funny. And then I'll just pick one other one up. The FIS Guide is what we kind of consider our bread and butter book. There are lots of college references out there, but it's kind of a great coffee table book, sitting around if you want to buy it and leave it on your in your den. It's fun reading. It's more it's not so objective data. It's not how many majors and all of that. It's a little texture and nuance about a bunch of colleges that a lot of our kids look at. So it not only gives you some good, not authoritative information, but it gives you some sense of some of the variables of the place, but it also gives you ideas about things you might not have considered that might become important to you as you are looking for a place, and give you new ideas about overlapping schools. You like this school, here's some other schools that people who like this school like. So it's a little bit of a treasure hunt. Go ahead.
Well, I think what we'll do is I'll leave this up for anybody who wants to take a sort of screenshot and or take a picture for to sort of go back at it later, and then just leave it up because this is our last slide. I wanted to give folks a chance to ask any specific questions that they have before we roll on to the next session. Is there anything that's on your mind that we can talk about now? Or please go jump in.
Could you maybe elaborate a little bit more about the process where the student gets paired with one of you? How does the dating game work?
It's a big draft.
For the folks on the live stream, the question was about how we get sort of matched up to college counselors, how that happens. So at a certain point along the line, students are given an opportunity to indicate that they might like to work with a particular counselor. We ask them to put a range on there because we may have them in the houses, we may have them on our teams, may have other experiences with them. So we'll give them a small window to sort of say, hey, I know this person, I'd like to be able to work with them. And then after that, and it's not a huge deal, but maybe certainly not half, but maybe not even a third of the students will indicate a preference. And then after that, we break out the entire list and try to create a broad range for everybody. across the 6 of us, so that we've got the range of the GPA distribution, we've got the range of demography, we've got the range of interests. And we do that deliberately because we don't want, it's just from the professional development standpoint, and also from the expertise standpoint, and from our relationships with the kids, we don't want one counselor to be known as, oh, that's the person who works with all the STEM kids, or that's the one who works with all the athletes. That's not a great relationship builder, and that's not great for our counselors. So we'll create some breadth to the program. And that's it, and we go from there, and we dive in. And so again, we might get slightly, the connection to the house is always sort of interesting, because I'll get some kids who will say, oh, I really want to work with DF because he's in Woodhull, and I'll get some other kids that'll say, yeah, I don't really, he knows too much about me. I'm not sure I want to start fresh with somebody new, and that's great, and that's completely fine. Other questions? Please.
It averages about 37, okay? Jeff and I have a slightly reduced load because we're the directors and we have some administrative responsibilities as well. But it basically is
235 divided by 6.
Other questions? Yeah?
Yeah, it's intensely complicated, and in fact, and they've even allowed sort of international students who don't really qualify for the national merit to take the PSAT. And ostensibly, each individual state has a threshold for qualifying for national merit, and that is the big driver of that. Is what your state threshold is, which is one of the reasons why PSAT doesn't mean anything, to be quite honest. I mean, and that's sort of true across the board. It never comes up in college admission. It's not part of the process. And I mean, if you end up being a good test taker, so you end up being a national merit semifinalist, and you end up applying to selected schools, the national merit semifinalist designation doesn't mean anything, because everybody in that pool is a national merit semifinalist pretty much, and they want your SATs. They don't care about your PSATs. So that process is really, like Holly referenced in terms of standardized testing. I wouldn't be surprised if in 5 years, under half of our kids will take the PSAT. It just doesn't matter anymore, which is a really interesting shift in standardized testing, because you're going to have some communities where they're going to push incredibly hard for sophomores to take the PSAT, which is a complete scam. But that's just part of sort of part of the culture. So you'll get the PSAT scores will come back usually right around Christmas. Sort of late December they'll pop in, or sometimes we get the scorebooks back before they go on break, and you can look at it, and it's not really predictive of how they do on the SATs either, which is sort of interesting, but not really an issue for us.
So it's a helpful, sort of jump start maybe to the testing world, the realities of it. Sometimes kids, if they're thoughtful about it, they can take their PSAT booklet and say, wow, I was really terrible at this kind of question. I better work on that. Like, it's a little barometer, but it is really meaningless. And there were many high schools that say, oh, our numbers of PSA or national merit semifinals, like that's some sort of marker of how good their school is. It's declining in terms of kids taking the test. It really started, I think, as a great marketing device and a money maker for the College Board, because
70
they
cents a
would
name.
sell, what was it?
70 cents a name.
70 cents a name. It was like building up their mailing list to try to recruit kids and send all their fancy brochures to. It's just college access and marketing has changed so that they don't need that anymore. It's a bizarre, it's a really bizarre part of the college admission machine.
So we have to transition to the next program. It's coming up in 5 minutes, but we'll stick around and stay up front to answer any specific questions. But put Winter Gathering, whether virtual or in person, on your calendar, and we'll see you in January or February. All right, let me switch, and I'll come down.
Okay.
Hey, oh yeah.